Hi, it's Rob Bryant, and welcome back again with the Imagine the 10th Dimension video blog. And those of you who have been watching these know that I'm a real sucker for video feedback. And this time we're going to be talking about the fact that the past has many paths that could have been traveled to get to the now that we're each witnessing. So this entry is dated October 7th, 2008, and it's called "The Past is an Illusion." I invite you to read along if you go to 10thdimension.com/blog. And so we're going to start out with a quote from Albert Einstein this time, who said, "This separation between past, present, and future is only an illusion." So physicists and philosophers often say it, time is an illusion. But things change, things move, and it takes time for those processes to occur. What are we supposed to be imagining if the distinction between past, present, and future is really only a persistent illusion? What we're talking about here is that our experience of time from instant to instant is really just a very narrow view of a much larger picture. Back in a blog entry called "What Would a Flatlander Really See?" we talked about how a 2D flatlander's vision would be even more limited than most of us can imagine. One of my sons recently sent me a link to a fun little flash game that asks you to deduce the shapes of objects and letters as they pass through a plane. And if you're reading along in the blog, there is a link there that'll get you to that game. It's called Z-Rocks or Z-Rocks if you're one of the people that pronounces that letter that way. Z-Rocks. This challenging puzzle game is actually giving you a taste of what you'd be able to see if you were an imaginary flatlander living within a 2D plane. Now, Everett's many worlds interpretation says that we as quantum observers don't collapse the wave function of our quantum reality. We merely observe it in a particular state at each particular instant. This time around, we're going to talk about the illusions that we fall into as we observe those ways of possibility that are represented within the now, that is our universe at this very instant, and how this can cause us to miss the potential that those waves really represent. So here's a question that is often asked. Is it possible for a person to predict the future? If so, doesn't that mean the future already exists and our free will is an illusion? The hard determinist viewpoint, which says everything from the Big Bang to the end of the universe was inevitable and our free will is an illusion, would seem to be supported by the idea that there's been only one path from the Big Bang to now. So why should there be more than one path from this moment forward? Likewise, if I pass a 3D object like a rock through a 2D plane, it does indeed appear that what is going to pass through has already been predetermined. Imagining that rock is really 4D, since it exists not just within 3D space but within 4D time, doesn't seem to make much difference, because a rock is still most likely going to be the same rock with the same shape 5 minutes, 5 months, or even 5 years from now. But what about passing through a 4D human capable of moving, dancing around, bending over and touching their toes and doing all the other things that their free will allows them to do? As that 4D person passes through the 2D plane, their shape will be unpredictable, and every time they pass through the plane, there will be different 2D cross-sections visible within the second dimension. Again, if a 2D flatlander were to somehow record the shape changes that had happened for one particular pass-through by that free will human, then the flatlander would have a recording that in their minds was a history which, once it happened, would not change again. So a 2D flatlander could convince themselves that what had happened was inevitable if that was their chosen mindset. The flash game, what we started talking about in the beginning of this entry then, is only able to be played because there's no free will movement in the shapes being presented, and the same 2D pattern is presented over and over until you guess correctly. And please do go play that game. It's a real brain buster, and it's quite an interesting little trick of perception that happens after you played it for a while. The quantum physics answer, promoted by respected experts like John Wheeler and Richard Feynman, is that the past has a certain amount of flexibility, just as the future does, and that there are many ways we could have gotten to our current now. Feynman called it the sum over paths or sum over histories concept, and Wheeler called it the self-excited circuit of quantum observation. This was an idea I talked about in my blog, Boredom and Consciousness, Part 1, in which I discussed the serious proposition from quantum physicists Lawrence Krauss and James Dent that our 1998 observation of the accelerating expansion of the universe has hastened its end. This doesn't mean, by the way, that I'm claiming that simply through the act of observing, we can make impossible things happen. This was the subject we explored in my blog entry, The Fifth Dimension Isn't Magic. But it does mean that if there are certain things about our history that were not completely locked in, that had elements that were indeterminate, then those things are part of a cloud of possible paths that we could have traveled upon to get to our current now. Physicists Krauss and Dent are talking about extremely large ideas from cosmology, but this idea also works at a personal level. For each of us, there are many ways that the past could have affected us, and until we irreversibly lock in one path or another, that past can effectively be changed. This idea relates strongly to the surprising scientific proof we've been talked about before, that we are capable of changing our genes. And look that video blog up too if you'd like to see about that idea. As I've said before, for persons trapped in repeating patterns of negative behavior, this idea can offer a way out because quantum mechanics tells us that there are many paths we could have traveled to get to our current now, and this means that the past has a certain amount of flexibility which we can take advantage of. In my blog entry, Local Realism Bites the Dust, we talked about the Anton Zeilinger team's experiments in Vienna that demonstrate these ideas as well. Is the past really an illusion? Well, not completely. And Feynman's sum over paths concept demonstrates the same idea. There are many paths we could have traveled to get to the absolutely real now that we are observing from instant to instant. I believe that it's time zero and the fourth dimension that convinces us that the past is less than it really is. And with my project, I believe the answer to all of this is in the fifth dimension rather than the fourth. That gives us an easily imagined explanation that allows for the straight and unwavering 4D line of time that supports the hard determinist view and lets us imagine within the fifth dimension the more probabilistic future and past that quantum mechanics asks us to visualize for the underlying structures of our reality. My blog entry, What Would a Linelander Really See?, offers further explanations of this way of thinking about time and free will. And all of this is part of thinking about the biggest picture of timelessness where, as Gavin Gerbrand so eloquently described it, everything is forever. To close, here's a video created by Ron Scott using video elements from archive.org for one of the 26 songs for my project. And this is about some of those events in the past that can create irreversible changes in the now that each of us is currently witnessing. The song is called Senseless Violence. I'm Rob Bryanton from the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog. Enjoy the journey.
Senseless violence. Senseless violence. Crime in the streets. Crime in the streets. Don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers. People
This entry is dated October 7th, 2008, and it's called The Past is an Illusion. I invite you to read along if you go to 10thdimension.com/blog. And so we're going to start out with a quote from Albert Einstein this time, who said, Hi, it's Rob Bryant, and welcome back again with the Imagine for those processes to occur. What are we supposed to be imagining if the distinction between past, present, and future is really only a persistent illusion? What we're talking about here is that our experience of time from instant to instant, this separation between past, present, and future is only an illusion. So physicists and philosophers often say it. Time is an illusion, but things change, things move, and it takes time. The 10th Dimension video blog, and those of you who have been watching these know that I'm a real sucker for video feedback, and this time we're going to be talking about the fact that the past has many paths that could have been traveled to get to the now that we're each witnessing. So